Snowden. Edward Snowden appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast last night, and he was on the Trevor Noah show, I believe, 2 days ago, and he is basically going out because he's got a book. And I think it's really interesting to me to see that he's actually speaking very freely about America and Russia and the relationships between America and Russia. And he's currently in Moscow. I find that amazing that he's not getting shut down by the Russian government, or that the Russian government isn't coming in on an interview like this where he is literally saying how corrupt Russia is, which is great to hear. He's an individual. He's a thinker. It was really nice. I watched the whole interview. He talked about how phones spy on you. Yeah, it was a really good watch. So I highly recommend you guys watch this interview on Rogan. It was literally, Joe wasn't even on the show. Like Joe, I mean, Joe wasn't asking about elk. I think Joe did ask about elk hunting. I think Joe did talk about drugs for a bit but for the most part, this was like Snowden for 2.5 hours. And like you can see, like down here, like I'm scrolling so you guys can see the timeline. Hold on a second. And you can see that primarily when I scroll on this, it is Snowden. And it's just Snowden all the way with like little bits of Rogan asking questions. I really thought this was one of the better Rogan interviews. Not because Joe wasn't in the I like Joe. Joe's a pretty cool dude in my opinion, and he comes up with some really interesting questions that many people wouldn't ask, and that's why I like him. His interviewing style is very laid back, but if he disagrees with you, he will kind of go at you, and I like that about his interview style. Like he will argue points, but in a very civil way. And it's very fun to watch the way in which he interviews his guests. And I really admire his style. He doesn't get a lot of credit for him. Sometimes, yes, it gets a little silly. I like it. I like the fact that his interviews get like a little bit silly. Sometimes people say he gets off topic. Dark says, I'm the Joe Rogan of gaming. Thank you, Dark. That's a compliment. I appreciate you. I've done some interviews with some people, and I'm going to plan on doing more in a podcast style format that I'll be putting on my Patreon page. I wanted to have one of my first episodes when we hit our second goal on Patreon is to do an interview with my friend Jiro from Microsoft, who is a ray tracing guy, and to talk about ray tracing in entirety and then its applications towards Star Citizen. And I really can't wait till we hit that second goal on Patreon. We're almost there. I think we're about halfway there. We're going to be having a commercial coming up that I'm going to be making for the YouTube channel, which will be our Loot and Scoot giveaway coming up this weekend. So make sure to share that. The Loot and Scoot brought to us by the Matadors, a pirate organization. So I'm going to make a very funny commercial for that. So stay tuned for that this weekend. I will be posting that this weekend while I'm up in Cleveland. I'll make sure to make that tonight and into tomorrow, and then post that on the channel. And I will also post a lot of the content we're doing today on the channel as well. This is what I like to do. That's fine, Erad. We can ask him about Age of Empires as well. I like Joe Rogan. Saw his stand-up live once, but 3-hour podcast a day was hard to keep up with. Yeah, I'm not too hip on his stand-up, like his comedy. It's okay. Like some of it's fine, but I personally like the podcast. I'll put it on in the car. Like I do a lot of driving. And like I'll listen to a lot of Howard Stern. I'll listen to a lot of Joe Rogan. People that I really admire their charisma. Those types of people I will listen to in my car. And since I do a lot of driving, I actually listen to Joe and Howard Stern quite often. What's up, Eagle? Welcome to the stream. Buzz says, ray tracing, just got my new rig yesterday with a 2080 Ti. Oh my God, you just made me jelly. You just made me jelly, Buzz. I need to check some of those demos. Oh, dude, that ruined my entire day, Buzz. Congratulations to you. I will go cry in a corner now. Verb says, never listen, watch Joe Rogan. Yeah, Joe is the type of guy who's just very, I like him. He's outspoken. He speaks his mind. And, this was great, though. This was great. Like, this particular interview was literally a very detailed version of Snowden's story, and very well put together. I think that Snowden took a lot of time before this book was released. Two things. One, what I'm learning here is that the American government is suing Snowden. They can't stop the book being published. The book is out now. Not quite sure the name of it. Sorry about that. But the book is out now, and you can buy it. But apparently the American government is suing him and taking the money directly from him. And Snowden was saying that he would love to come back to America, but he wants a fair trial. And the reason why he's not coming back is because he is 110% sure that if he were to come back, he would not have a fair trial, because they've already proved to him in a court case, I believe in Virginia, with a man named Daniel Hale, who was in a similar situation as Snowden, and saw things going on in the U.S. government that he did not like. The government essentially said in that particular case of, I think it's Hale or Hayden, sorry if I got the name wrong, they said that, we do not want you to present your side of the story or facts from the side of the story or anything related to it. And that got passed by the judge, and therefore none of his testimony was valid, and he is currently serving time. And so Edward Snowden said, well, I'm not coming back to the States until I'm sure I get a fair trial, which is interesting. Good morning, Hormagaz. Welcome to the stream, bro. Permanent Record is the name of it. Thank you, Verpine. Thank you very much. He goes on to talk about quite a bit in this interview. Like, this was back in 2013 when a lot of people were not sure if, in fact, our devices were picking up and then dialing in through to the government. And Snowden actually talks about how Amazon is hooked up in a cloud type of situation with the government. And it would explain why Amazon's stock is above $2,000 a share. So early in 2012 and 2013, he talks about how Amazon partnered up with the government. It's interesting now to think that Amazon is the place where, like, I would say I'm just throwing a speculative guesstimate out there, but I would say that like 60%, and that's, I think, lowballing it, of people shop now on Amazon. And the stock price being above $2,000 a share is very concerning. And then Snowden last night talking about how it's pretty common knowledge that, and many people reported on this and then got squelched, that Amazon is in cahoots with the government through a cloud sharing system in which the information is then shuttled to the government. And he also talked about quite a bit of he talked about so much on this interview that I think I watched the whole thing in entirety, and then I watched it again. And it was that interesting to me. It was hard to watch sometimes because Snowden just kept, giving you an avalanche of details, and you had to sift through all these details. And sometimes you were just like, oh God, I got to take a breath. And you just started to think to yourself, like, by God, like, this man, he's like the Paul Revere of our age in a weird way, all very strange to me that the country hasn't done anything since since this news has broken out. Like, it seems like we haven't decided on a course of action, and it almost seems as if like there has become this very, very clear delineation between the government and the people in the United States. And it's really scary to me to see that, like, the public, we who are governed, that should have the control, are not really anymore. And listening to Snowden in the way that he was explaining the government did many things against the Constitution to rewrite the Constitution in their favor so that they could literally spy on us at any point in time. In fact, one example that Snowden gave was he was sitting there doing surveillance, and one of his friends and his buddies to the left of him is like looking into a family's video camera on their computer, and then goes into the guy's computer, finds files of his wife naked, and then looks over to Snowden and says, bonus. I mean, that to me was freaky. Then Snowden explaining how he looked into somebody's camera, their webcam at their house, and saw a father. He said this is when it happened to him, when he realized that what he was doing truly was nefarious. And he had said that he was looking into some what they call dirty word searches, right? And he explains what those are. I won't get into detail on that. And he eventually found his way into the webcam of a house, and a father had a small daughter sitting on his lap, and the small daughter was typing away, and the father was, helping his daughter out with homework. And he kind of glanced into the camera, and just stared at the camera. And Snowden said, like, it really freaked him out to think that like somebody was watching him, and that's the day. He said like it was very strange for him that he said, wait a second, what am I doing? Like, what is going on here? Like, this is very illegal. Like, what we're doing as a government is very illegal. He even talked about the day, and we'll finish up on this. But one of the things I found interesting about his talk, that was super interesting to me to hear that he opened up like that. He's never talked like that on interview. And that's another reason I like Rogan, is because when Rogan interviews people, when Howard Stern interviews people, it seems to me like they open up more, and they're more human. They talk about their feelings a lot more than other shows do. And that's why I like Rogan. That's why I like Stern. But the one thing that really caught me off guard was when he started talking about, oh God, what was it? I kind of lost track here. I'm sorry. There was a portion of the show that was dedicated to like the 9/11 attacks. And he had talked about the day of the 9/11 attacks, that he was, 18 years old. He drove past the NSA building every day as a kid. His family was all going back from the very beginning of this formation of the United States of America, was all involved in the government. His family served in the government. His mother was serving in the court that was actually going after him. And he talked about how when he drove past the building every day, he said, I'm going to work for the NSA. I'm going to do work for them. And the day that 9/11 happened, the director of the head of intelligence literally, or is either the NSA or the CIA, literally called and told everybody to get out of the building, that there were like a flood of cars of government workers that were leaving the buildings the day of 9/11. And he had said how that stuck with him his entire life. He thought to himself, like, why is everybody leaving on a day when they are needed the most? And he talked about the problem with the government branches is that they're all very competitive, that they all want to be the branch that finds something out, the branch that they're very competitive to the point where they're very self-interested. And instead of, being there the very day that America needed them the most, the director said, go. And that really stuck with him. He said it was just like a really weird experience and a breakdown in the way in which our government works. And then he started talking about phones and shit. But like, I highly recommend this. I highly recommend this interview. It was really very eye-opening. And I think the scariest part about all of this is that like we have not yet really, as a country, as a people, we have not figured out what we want to do on this. I think we can all agree at this point that yes, we are being watched, that we can, somebody can pull this stream up right now. Obviously, I'm broadcasting it, but when I'm not, that somebody could literally just pull, my cam on and just see what I'm up to when I'm not streaming. And I think we all, in a weird way, know that now this is fact and that they do this. It was a project called Solar Wind, and I don't know, guys. It just kind of freaked me out to know that 6 years later, the things that we were wondering about now we know are true, and that 6 years later, none of us have decided what we want to do about it. Like, none of us have actually held the government accountable as a people, and none of us have decided what direction to go into, in regards to, being watched by our government. I always been a privacy cover over my webcam when not in use. That's smart, Buzz. They can still pull up the microphone, I'm sure. Yeah, they can still pull up audio. The software they use is called Prism. Thank you, Jamie. So yeah, this is not conspiracy stuff. This is actually very well documented, proven facts. These are all facts right now, and it's scary, very, very scary. So go and I will put a link in the stream when I'm done to this interview. In fact, I'm going to start doing that on most of my streams. I'm going to start putting links on the things that we talk about in our stream. And it was just really, really, really concerning to me.